The franchisor sets the guidelines, and you, the franchisee, must run it according to the agreement. You cannot go rogue. You must run it the way that the franchisor sets it. Now, if you don't like that, start your own business. Hey everyone, welcome to Courtside Conversations. My name's Emile, founder and owner of Little Boomers Basketball, and it's a pleasure to be your host today. Wherever you're watching today's episode, I hope you're having a booming day, and yes, the pun is intended. My journey to entrepreneurship started on May 1st, 2018 when I launched my first basketball program with 9 kids enrolled. Today, thousands of kids across Australia are thriving in our programs, all thanks to the commitment and passion of our incredible franchisees. This podcast is here to give you real, straightforward, no BS insights into business, entrepreneurship, and what it's like to own a franchise. Without further ado, let's get into today's episode. Welcome back to Courtside Conversations, guys. It's a pleasure to have you back on our podcast where we talk everything about franchising, business, and entrepreneurship. Today's going to be an interesting episode. Recently, the AAAC, Australian Competition Consumer Commission, it's a government body here in Australia, released a course on franchising. And they're advising that anybody interested in franchising to complete this course. And I must admit, it's quite a thorough course. And they want anybody interested in franchising to complete this course to make sure that they're knowledgeable and they understand what they're getting themselves into before they invest in a franchise. What I'm going to do in today's episode is I'm going to break down the first module, which talks about is franchising right for you. I'm going to break it down. I've got some key notes here that I've highlighted. But what I want to do for you is elaborate on some of their key points, but break it down in simple to understand language, because franchising can be very complex. The language is terminology and words that might go right over your head. I'm going to break it down, the first module, in simple language for you to understand. And then at the end, I'm going to rate the course out of 10 and we'll see what it is. Let's get into it. So guys, before we get into today's episode, in your opinion, you always got to ask yourself why. Like whenever anybody does something or is doing something, understand the motive. Why do you think the AAAC is going out of their way to create a thorough course for you to complete before you franchise? Why do you think that is? It's because there is so much misinformation and confusion when it comes to franchising. That's the only reason people create courses. It's to educate you. It's like the PT industry. I'll always use this example. Type into Google how to lose weight, and there's like 50 ways, like high protein, calorie deficit, keto diet, carnivore diet, cardio in the morning, cardio in the afternoon. And by the end of it, you're so confused and misinformed. And that's the exact same thing with franchising. That's why the AAAC has released this course. And people are coming into franchising not knowing what it entails because of all these myths, all these misconceptions. And then unfortunately, it's a sour exit, whether it's an immediate exit or the lawyer's involved, and then it gets ugly. So let's break down the first module. I'll give you a funny example, guys, as well, that illustrates how misinformed people are when it comes to franchising. 2 years ago, we once brought a family down for a discovery session at one of our locations as part of the franchising process to get to know the owners and the founders. And when we were having a discussion with this family, we talked about the investment, and then they said, investment? Do we have to pay money to become a franchisee? And then I looked at Mary at the time, and I'm like, oh man, this couldn't be further from the truth. And look, partly it was our fault. We should have, before they came down to a discovery session, gone over this. But the fact that they didn't know that a franchise had an investment, I mean, hopefully you're not that far off, guys. Hopefully you got some knowledge to know that with any franchise system, there's an upfront investment and an ongoing fee. But that just goes to show you how much misinformation is out there. And again, what's the number one legal battle that franchise lawyers face at the moment? The number one legal battle is a misrepresentation of the facts. The franchisor promises you're going to get this, you're going to get support, you're going to get $100,000 in the first year. Franchisee signs a dotted line, come into the network. My goodness, you said to me I'm going to get this. You said to me get that. Lawyers involved. Let's not let that be you. Okay, so I've got some notes here that I'm going to go over in the course. The first part of the course, which I really like, distinguishes the 3 different roles in franchising. You've got the franchisor, the franchisee, and the franchise agreement that puts all 3 together. Now, I'm going to show you how they defined the franchisor. I'm just going to break it into simple terms. So the AAAC has defined the franchisor as the owner of the franchise system. In exchange for payment, they allow the franchisee to sell products or services using the franchisee system's brand and operating systems. The franchisor generally controls the franchise systems and business direction. That last part, guys, is so important. The franchisor controls the franchise systems and business directions. Unfortunately, a lot of franchisees come into the network thinking that because they've paid an upfront investment, they're now a minority owner, like, for a baseball team where you're like a 10 or 20% owner. So you've got say in where the business goes. That's not the case, guys. I mean, a good franchisor will get the opinion of the franchisees, but ultimately it's up to the franchisor which direction the business goes. And I can't illustrate that more enough because we get franchisees coming up, we'd like to do this, we want to do this, we want to do that. And sometimes they feel, a little bit entitled that has to happen, and that's not the case. Think about the franchisor as the architect. They have created the blueprints, the systems, the technology, the website, the brand. They've done all the architectural work for you, the franchisee, to take over. Now, the ACCC has defined the franchisee as the person or company who buys the rights to run a franchise business. They must run the business according to the franchise agreement. Oh man, that last sentence sums it up. They must run the business according to the franchise agreement. The franchisor sets the guidelines, and you, the franchisee, must run it according to the agreement. You cannot go rogue. And we see this like sometimes in our network, a franchisee might go rogue. Instead of using this supplier, which is from head office, they want to use that supplier. Instead of running the program this way, because we're a kids basketball program, they want to run it this way. And guys, that's not allowed in a franchise agreement. You must run it the way that the franchisor sets it. Now, if you don't like that, start your own business, right? Because if you're an independent business, my friend, you can run it however you want. You can do it this way, that way, you can do whatever you want. But with a franchise, there's a way of doing things. And the third one that I really like they've incorporated is the franchise agreement. So you've got the franchisor, the franchisee, and the franchise agreement. And how it defines it. This is a legally binding contract that sets out the rules of the franchise relationship that both the franchisor and franchisee have agreed to. The franchisee has usually written the agreement, so the rules favor them. You know what? Good on the ACCC for being honest about that, because the franchise agreement, and I'm going to be very honest with you, favors the franchisor. It is not a 50-50 agreement. And what I tell our franchisees before they come in is like, because you've got to do your due diligence. When we hand out the franchise agreement, it's like a 200-page document, and it's long. It's very long. I tell them that make sure they don't get a normal solicitor that hasn't got any franchise experience to review the agreement, because sometimes they go to their local home accountant or their local solicitor that specializes in family law. The solicitor reads this 150-page agreement and they're like, what the heck are you signing? You're signing your life away. Change that, change that, change that. Don't agree to that, don't agree to that, don't agree to that. The reality is the franchise agreement does favor the franchisor, because as you can imagine, it can't be a 50-50 agreement. If the franchisor has spent years of money, time, and energy building a business, they've got to protect their brand. They've got to protect their intellectual property. They've got to protect everything that they've created. It can't just be an easy 50-50 split. So just make sure that when you're getting your franchise agreement reviewed, make sure the solicitor has somewhat of an experience in reviewing franchise agreements, because very rarely can any part of the franchise agreement be changed. So if you come back and say, I want this change, I don't like these terms, I don't like these terms, we can't have bias, we can't favor it. Most of the times, none of those changes can be made. We can educate you on why those things are in the agreement, but at the end of the day, they're set in and they can't be changed, or they shouldn't be changed, in my opinion. So just keep, I really like here how the ACCC kind of said that it's written to favor the franchisor, and that is the case. And the franchise agreement binds the franchisor, and it talks about the rules. And what a good franchisor does, and this is what I do with all, everybody that's coming in to become a franchisee, I really take a little bit of time to explain some of the concerns that they have, right? So for example, one of the clauses in a franchise agreement is that you need to dedicate a minimum of 25 to 30 weeks on the business, right? One of the people coming into franchising, his name was Charles, great fella. He said, "Oh, Emile, what's going to happen with this? Like 25 to 30 hours. If 1 week I do 10 hours, is that it? You guys going to terminate the agreement?" And I was like, and I said, "No, Charles. Firstly, let's understand the reason why that time limit is there. In order for your business to grow, your franchise to grow, you must put the minimum time into the business. We see all of our high performers are putting in so much time into their business, right? If you're going to come into something expecting to do the minimum time, then it's not going to grow. And you know what's going to happen? You'll be calling me, "Hey, this franchise isn't growing, my revenue's not growing, That's why we've got that clause in there to spend the minimum time on the business. So firstly, I like to explain why that clause is there. And then with Charles, I said, "No, we're not going to terminate you if you're 5 hours below, but we're going to make sure that, it's okay if you have an off week here or there, that you put in the minimum time because it's in your best interest. If you put more time in the business, most of the time, your business will grow." So that was an example of something I had to talk about to someone that was interested in franchising. So that's the first part of the AAAC course. Now let's talk about the second part. It says, what does franchisors do and what do franchisees do? So the AAAC is trying to distinguish the two different roles. What do the franchisors do and what do the franchisees do? I'll summarize some of the key dot points. The franchisors, let's do the franchisee first. They must follow the franchise agreement, pays money to the franchisor for the rights to run the business, an initial investment and usually an ongoing. They often work in the franchise business, so they're dealing with customers, they're on the ground, like our franchisees are speaking to parents, speaking to daycare, speaking to schools. They may employ people to work in the franchise business. Our franchisees employ their own coaches. They sell the product or service and they pay ongoing fees to the franchisor. What are the ongoing fees? That'll be talking about in another episode. The franchisor, the roles and responsibility of the franchisor, they must follow the franchise agreement, true. They own and control the franchise system and develop the products or services. The franchisor is the innovator, guys, not the franchisee. The franchisor is the pioneer, the architect. They create the systems for the franchisee to follow. A good franchise network has really strong systems. This is how you do this. This is how you do this. This is how you set up a marketing campaign. This is how you create your flyer. Strong systems in place. And they give franchisees permission to run the franchise business according to the franchise agreement. You can notice there's a theme here. The AAAC continue to go back to the franchise agreement because the franchise agreement, which you sign before you become a franchisee, is really the structure of the relationship, how things are going to flow. Hey, just quickly, if you're enjoying today's episode, it will mean the world to me if you can leave a positive review or share it with a friend that may benefit from this. I've also put some bonus resources in the description, including a real franchise case study that you can download under our Franchise Success Blueprint. Hope you find it useful. Enjoy the rest of the episode and rock on. Adios. And guys, sometimes when there's a lot of excitement in a franchise, the franchisee tends to overlook the franchise agreement. Yeah, let me just sign, quick, sign, check this, yeah, nothing, all good, all right, sign. Guys, don't do that because that can come back to bite you on the ass. You need to make sure that you do your due diligence before you sign the agreement. And actually, under the franchise code, you're not allowed to sign for 14 days. So the franchise code said, and why do you think this is, guys? It's because people know that when they're excited, they sign things that they probably shouldn't or at least review. So the franchise code says you have got 14 days to review this agreement. It's called the consideration period. You can't sign this agreement until 14 days. So on day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 till 14, you can't sign it. After the 14th day, you can sign it. The franchising code does this to prevent people from excitement making silly, stupid, emotional decisions. So take the time, review the franchise agreement. Okay, let's move on. Now, I love this little sad story that the AAAC put in their course. It's a picture of this bloke and he doesn't look too happy. And this is what he said. When I bought my franchise, I thought of it like a partnership with the franchisor where we were equally invested in the success of my franchise business. But over time, I've realized I'm just one of many franchisees. The franchisor isn't there to protect me and I'm replaceable. If I understood this before signing, I would have made more inquiries about the franchisor and their relationship with the franchisees and negotiated harder to protect my interest in the franchise agreement. So obviously this gentleman thought that he's coming into like a 50-50 partnership where he's a minority owner and he's got say in this, say in that, say in that. And this is a very common misconception in franchising. I think because a franchisee pays a big upfront fee, whether it's $50, $100 or $150,000, that they've got majority say in the business. It's not true, guys. Don't think that. Again, a good franchisor, and I do this all the time, and so does my team, my head office team, we get feedback from the franchisees on product development, on what they need, on what's missing. But ultimately, we don't have to do all of those things. It's at our discretion, okay? So just keep that in mind. We don't want to be like this sad bloke over here. And look, at the end of the day, franchisees are replaceable, guys. Like, you're not going to be at the franchise system forever. I mean, some franchisees are around for 10, 15, 20 years. Some renew after 5 years, but it's not going to be a lifelong thing. The brand will stay forever, but the faces will change. He is true in that regard. Okay. Boy, do I love this next section in the AAAC, and it talks about income. And the AAAC says, will I get an income, as in you? And they give you 3 scenarios: a franchise, an independent business, you starting your own business, and an employee. I really love how they've created these 3 different scenarios for you to understand, do you get an income based on these 3 scenarios? Now, with franchise business, they said maybe. I love that. They're really protecting themselves. They didn't say yes, because that is the most stupidest thing they can say, because a lot of people think because you're coming into a franchise, you're guaranteed revenue. Please, if a franchisor guarantees revenue, run the other way. You are not guaranteed revenue in a franchisee. You've got a high likelihood if the business is, if they've got a great brand, a great system, a great product, but you are not guaranteed revenue. The ACCC says maybe. All right, they say income or profit is not guaranteed. Your income depends on what your franchise makes minus your expenses. And it also says that even if you are not making money, you still need to pay royalty fees and other fees. That is really important, because I think some people think in franchising, if they're not turning over any money, that the royalty payment and the marketing fee stops. That's not true. The franchisor has operating expenses. The show needs to go on. They have got a lot of overheads as well. So even if you're not making money in your franchise business, you will still need to pay royalties and marketing levy depending on what that is in the franchise agreement. So, will you get an income in a franchise? Maybe. I love that. The ACCC's protected themselves. Very good there. Independent business. They've also put maybe. If you're running your own business, if you start your own business, let's say instead of doing Little Boomers Basketball, you do Little Johnny's Academy, whatever you want to call it. Are you guaranteed revenue? No, you're not. You are not guaranteed revenue even if you start your own business. In my opinion, it is harder because you are building something from the get-go. You have to get all the systems from the ground up. But it's still maybe. The only time that you are guaranteed income, and the ACCC says it here, is the third one, employee. And it says here that all employees are guaranteed income, duh. But as you can see here, if you want stability, if you want 100% certainty, if you want a 100% paycheck coming in on that Thursday before you go late night shopping, the only guaranteed way is an employee, because if they don't pay you, that is illegal in this country of Australia. So thank you for making that clear, the ACCC. Franchising, independent business, maybe. Income, only guaranteed if you're an employee. I love it. Now, the ACCC have a next section that says, will I make key business decisions? And again, they've put the 3 scenarios: franchise business, independent business, and employee. And I think they've put key business decision because, going back to what I was saying, franchisees coming into a network feel like they've got 50-50 majority say in a lot of the decisions. Will I make key decisions? Franchise business, not usually. Very true. The ACCC has said not usually. And it says here, your decision-making power is limited to what's allowed in the franchise agreement. Again, we're going back to the franchise agreement. You can buy basic supplies, which is usually decided from the franchisee, but you won't have the option for cheaper prices. For example, you usually can't add new products or change suppliers. I love this. So I'll give you a classic example. In our company, we've got suppliers for everything. We've got a supplier that does the certificates. So like at the end of the term, a child receives a certificate with their name on it. We've got a supplier that all the franchisees go to. We've had instances where the franchisee says, I don't want to go with this supplier. I'm going with my own supplier. And that in itself, guys, is a breach of the franchise agreement, because it says in the franchise agreement that you have to go to all of our suppliers. Now, your other supplier might be cheaper. Sure, it might be a friend that you know. It might be better quality. You still have to go to the supplier that the franchisor has provided. And we've had to give, unfortunately, some warning notices to people because you have to go with our suppliers. Now, if you've got a better supplier, or somebody that's cheaper and got better quality, by all means, you can recommend it to the franchisor, and the franchisor can say, all right, maybe we will go with this supplier. But sometimes the franchisees, thinking about money and wanting to get cheaper costs, will go to a different supplier. And just remember, that is a violation of the franchise agreement. Will I make key business decisions as an independent business? Of course you are. It says yes. If you're running your own business, you can do what the heck you want. You are really your own boss. Do whatever you want. Employee, not usually. Well, you don't really get to make key decisions if you're an employee. That's why you are an employee. Okay. Can I make big changes to the business? The AAAC give you 3 scenarios. Again, guys, big decisions, key decisions and big changes are the same thing. Franchise business, not usually. Independent business, of course you can. Make whatever change you want to your own business. If you're an employee, not usually. So that's pretty much the same as the previous slide. Now, the AAAC say, can I get any support setting up the business or when I come across problems? Now, this is interesting because if you guys have done any research on franchising, everyone says about franchising, 24/7 support. Our support is your success. We will support you. We're here for you. Rah, 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 rah. So what it says here is franchise business support, maybe. There's usually support. See how it's saying usually. There's usually support from the franchisor, but not all franchisors give the same level of support. And that is so true. What one franchise company gives in the form of support might be completely the opposite of another. Hence why it is so important you speak to franchisees before you come into the franchise network and ask what support they are getting. Like actually what support they're giving. And I know what support we do. We do quarterly catch-ups, fortnightly catch-ups, training sessions, once a week Zoom. We've got a ton of support, but don't think that another franchise network will have that same level of support. It might vary. Got to do your due diligence, got to do your research. So it says about support for franchising, maybe, depends on the franchise system. Independent business, there is no support. Solo mio, you are on your own road. And I know this because when I started my business in 2018, I had no support. Like I was there trialing and error, working this out. It is a lonely road. That's why people like the idea or are attracted by franchising because of the support. Employee, yeah, there is usually support. You've got a manager, someone up above that you can raise your problems with. So when it comes to support for franchising, guys, there is some level of support, but it can vary. Make sure you do your homework, speak to franchisees, ask more information about the support. I like this one. Listen to this. Can I get fired or can someone else end the business? Franchise system? Yes, you can get fired. I don't know if fired's the word, but you know, whatever. You can't be fired, but the franchisor may be able to end the franchise agreement early, terminate it. If this happens, you may be entitled to compensation. And this gets really ugly. Guys, you got to remember, the franchisor's best interest is to protect the brand. I've said it in a previous episode. If one franchisee is underperforming, it's going to affect the brand as a network. In the event where you as a franchisee are putting the brand at risk, and even though the franchisor has already spoken to you, you are still putting the reputation of the brand at risk, that's when termination can come at play. And the franchise agreement says this, anything that's got to do with brand, image, or affecting the quality of the brand is grounds for termination. So just make sure that you understand that yes, franchise agreements can end abruptly, they can end ugly, but if you do your homework, if you have a high level of standard with how you operate your work, and you read the franchise agreement, you understand this beforehand. Independent business, you can't really fire unless you go bankrupt, and it says here, unless you go solvent or bankrupt, that's the only way of being fired. Employee, usually yes. If you're not meeting certain standards, if you've breached something, you can get your notice and you get fired. So just remember, guys, franchise business, it can be terminated. All right. What are the main takeaways of the lesson today? The ACCC put, is franchising right for you? And here's the main takeaways. There's no guarantee you'll make an income from franchising. It depends on whether you make enough money to cover costs. I love this, guys. That's the first myth of franchising, and it's probably the reason why the ACCC put that as their main takeaway. You are not guaranteed an income in franchising, nor are you guaranteed an income if you start your own business. The only time you're guaranteed an income if you're an employee. Any franchisor that guarantees you an income, just do a bit of research and do a little bit of a red flag, maybe a yellow flag. In franchising, you usually have to pay fees like royalty and marketing fees, even if you aren't making a profit. If your business isn't turning over money, guys, you still need to pay head office what you owe them. In franchising, you have a lot of the same risk as a small business, but less choice and decision-making power. I don't know if I agree with that. you do have a lot of the risks, but in a good franchise system, if you're coming into a great franchise system, you usually got the leverage of a powerful brand with systems and a proven product. So in that regard, the risk I wouldn't say is the same as starting your own business, because if you're starting your own business, you got to test the market. Your product might work, it might not work. But if you've got 15, 20 franchises, it's been tested 15 or 20 times. So I don't 100% believe in that, but there are a lot of the same risks in franchising. So guys, how would I score the AAAC's course on is franchising right for you? Man, I give it a solid 7 out of 10. I think it was really good. What I love was how it gave the comparisons about the 3 different ways to make money in this world, which is franchise, business, as in your own business, and employee. And it goes over the 3 roles. I really love that. It really allows you to distinguish what area you're guaranteed income. What I really didn't like was it didn't really dive into support. And I think one of the main elements when people are considering franchising is that support. I don't know if the course is going to deliver more about that, but it should have really broken down like what support entails, because a lot of people are very confused about support and it can be a little bit of a gray area. So I think they could have done a better job. But overall, 7 out of 10. Guys, I appreciate you jumping on today's episode. I hope you enjoyed that deep dive. I hope you learned a couple of things. Like, follow, comment below. Keen to get your feedback. Let me also know what you thought of that episode. I've never done something like that where I break down a course into simple language. If you loved it, just drop a comment, drop a like, and I'm going to keep doing more of these types of content. Take care. Have a good week.